Antanil Tulian Meldanin, and thank you once again for joining me. My name is Lord Aramil, and this is Luki, also known as Lucius the Gatekeeper. If we're lucky, Luki will be joining us probably for the entirety of today's podcast, because he's very much a lap cat, and he's very happy to just be on my lap. Hello, Teru. Welcome back. So today, no, you don't want Dr. Pepper, the favorite of nerds and cats. Dr. Pepper is not our sponsor. Let's see. Yes, today we will be continuing where we left off last week at Paladins, because through a bit of chatting with friends, I realized that I had made an error in saying that I'd never played with Paladin, and for that I apologize. But the most memorable Paladin I don't remember because he didn't call himself a Paladin. This was a D&D version of Skyrim, so Elder Scrolls in general, really, but mainly focused on Skyrim, where the Paladin was played by the same person who played, Daisy and Juno, the bard and monk from last week that I referred to. I can't remember his name as a Paladin, but he didn't, his title wasn't Paladin, it was a Vigilant of Stendarr. Dr. Pepper. So, his whole shtick was blatantly denying that the Vigilance of Stendarr had been destroyed in Skyrim. Because if you played the Dawnguard DLC, hello, it's okay. Yes, it's alright. I won't let the vampires get to you. Then the House of Vigilance, or whatever it was called, the Fortress of the Vigilance of Stendarr, basically got destroyed. Yes. So, his whole thing was like, no, they're fine, everything's fine, they're just on vacation, it's okay. And just completely, the whole campaign long, it was just, no, everything's fine, we're just not going there, it's okay. Shut up. I don't care if you've been there. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not a smoking pile of ruin. So between that and, what was it? Meridia's Beacon made an appearance. I don't think we ever actually did the quest for that. But every so often, one of us would remember that we had the beacon in our inventory, and we'd pass it off to one of the other player characters, and Raz, who is the DM, would just, a new hand touches the beacon. Okay, that's nice. Yeah. So, my apologies, Nerevar, for forgetting that you played a Paladin. Yeah. But in my mind, you were playing a Vigilant of Stendarr, not a Paladin. Which brings us up next to Ranger. Rangers are sad in D&D 3.5, and in D&D 5th edition, as far as I'm aware. About as sad as Luke, apparently, looking at the ground. They just seem very underpowered. And that's unfortunate, because I rather enjoy the aesthetic of a Ranger, but unfortunately you can just make a better Ranger by having a fighter who... Oh, okay. Really that intrigued by my mug? Fine, whatever. That's what I thought. But you can make a better Ranger by having a fighter who focuses on either dual wielding or archery and take some like nature stuff. Maybe even multi-classing into druid once. That would make a pretty solid ranger. Maybe even a better ranger. I'd have to actually build one out. Oh. If you scratch open your scabs, you're going to be a sad boy. Okay. But, rangers. Like I mentioned, they can specialize into either dual wielding, so 2 swords, or archery, which is kind of, I won't say cliche, but, it works. All is well. They also get favored enemies, which is fun, so you can specialize against certain types of opponents. I think that if the entire campaign was going to revolve around woodland fighting against one particular type of enemy, you could make a very solid case for a ranger. After that, I cannot say that rangers would be great. There have been rangers in campaigns I've run and campaigns that I've been a part of. I've even played a ranger a couple times. They're not bad at first level, but they kind of fall off the power curve, and it kind of gets boring. So, let's see. I think the most memorable ranger I ever had the joy of playing alongside, or actually it was DMing for, in this case, was Ash Helios. She was a elven ranger played by Crixus. Actually, I believe that was his first D&D character. And I should have warned him that rangers kind of are so-so, but, I mean, it was still early days for all of us. Now, Ash was training to be a Beastmaster. That was kind of her whole shtick. Because Crixus figured out halfway through that Ranger was kind of meh on their own. But he's like, what if I get some pets and just have attack dogs? So I think by the end of the campaign, she was riding around on top of, like, I want to say a dire wolf, because, hell yeah. But I don't know where it got started, but it was just, she was an expert at animal handling, alright? To the point where we'd make jokes about taming wild animals in a snap, or more accurately, in a flick. Because at some point, it's just like, he rolled a natural 20 on animal handling check, and he's just like, I flick it in the taint to establish dominance, and it's my bitch now, right? And everybody lost their goddamn mind. And that's kind of been a reoccurring gag ever since. So, that's, yeah, so, flick them in the taint to establish dominance. That's the Ranger way. Next up is something that's a bit more familiar to basically everyone, and it's a rogue. Now, every good adventuring party needs a rogue, especially if you're going into a dungeon. If you're doing anything at all to do with indoors, if you ever expect to come across a locked door, get yourself a rogue. It's just how it works. They are the quintessential skill monkey, alright? They get a ridiculous amount of skill points at first level and at basically every level thereafter. And they can specialize in half a dozen different fields. Yes. Yes, they can. So they are your lockpickers, your trap disablers, If they focus on certain ways, they could be your acrobat, your second story man is what I think the official term is. So somebody who can climb up to the second story building, second story window, get in, get through. You're not wrong, Teru. I think we did get our hands on the skeleton key for a little bit, and yeah, we definitely kept that in our back pocket for a while. Anyways, the idea is that a rogue is your, well, he's the one who uses the skills. Anything from appraise down to use rope, practically, a rogue is good for it. If you need to go somewhere seedy and try and find a member of the underworld, like the criminal underworld, not like hell, then you have the rogue do the talking, usually. Let's see. I've made a couple rogues. Once or twice. But I think my favorite story about rogues had to be the Rogue campaign. So this is another one that Roz ran. And everyone started at 3rd level. And 2 of those levels had to be Rogue. So your first 2 levels were Rogue. And then you could do whatever. So I think I was 2 levels of Rogue, a level in Cleric. I know my brother was 2 levels in Rogue and a level in Wizard. I don't remember what the other players were, I'll be honest. Let's see here. We had one who was an anthropomorphic owl. I remember that much. And then there was Crixus again, who played as kind of a nobleman. I think he might have been a rogue fighter? Maybe. The whole thing was just this series of hijinks. And I'll get back to my brother's rogue wizard when we get to the wizard part. Because that was terrifying. He made something that I can't even imagine the work that went into figuring out the combo that he had, but it was terrifying. And we'll just leave that with the campaign culminated in us cutting out and stealing the kingdom's treasury. Not the contents of the treasury, though that too, but the actual room, the treasury room, we stole. And that is a great rogue. Moving on, we get to sorcerers. Now, sorcerers are the trust fund children when it comes to arcane magic. You have magic because it is in your blood, generally speaking. A lot of sorcerers claim like some sort of draconic heritage, and D&D kind of encourages that to an extent. So, yeah, sorcerers. Magic. Arcane magic. That you don't have to work for. The casting stat is charisma, so if you don't have a bard in your party, the sorcerer is probably your next best bet when it comes to somebody who talks to the NPCs. And as a sorcerer, you might want to just have a good couple ranks in diplomacy or bluff. Mainly because villagers can get very antsy around mages in general. Let's see. I'll try to think back to a really memorable sorcerer. Because there have been a lot of sorcerers and a lot of wizards. And sometimes I forget which are which. I'll be entirely honest. But I think I want to say Harold was a sorcerer. And Rosal, perhaps correct me if I was wrong, but he was a pyromancer. Okay. So specializing in fire magic, destructive magic. And he believed, completely incorrectly, but he believed that his power flowed from alcohol, or most specifically, absinthe. Alright? Some really strong shit. So to cast magic, he added a material component, which was a shot of absinthe. So by the time combat ended, he was wasted. And this led to a lot of very interesting halfway through points of combat where he was just kind of tipsy and might miss a spell or miscast or do something like that just because he's wasted. It didn't help that he had a reserve feat, which meant that as long as he had, I think, a 3rd level spell, as long as he kept that, kept from casting all of his 3rd level spells, he could just use like a 1d6 or 2d6 firebolt, just ad infinitum. He's also the only character who has ever made a spell in any of my campaigns. A lot of characters seem to be pretty content with just finding interesting spells already in the books and then working off that. But Harold was the only one to come up with a spell, and it was called Harold's Rebuttal. It was a counter spell, so I think it was like a 4th level spell, to counter a lower level spell, and then it made like a force effect, which would bull rush the enemy caster and make them go prone. So you needed like a will save to negate the dispel check, and then a fortitude save to resist the bull rush. He called it the shut up and sit down spell, because wizards are notoriously good at will saves and notoriously bad at fortitude saves. So he just like knocking enemy wizards down. But that's a sorcerer. And finally, we get to the end of the player's handbook with wizard. Yes. Sorry, I kept you from falling down. And wizards really require very little in the way of introduction or explanation. They are your book nerds. They are the people who learned magic through great study and long years of apprenticeship. They might be part of a wizard's college. They might be, no matter what, they are the intellectuals of the party usually. Intelligence is their spellcasting stat. So if your wizard's highest stat is not intelligence, they're playing a wizard very strangely. Let's see. my favorite wizards. One of them is definitely my brother's addition to the Rogue campaign. Now, I'm trying to think back. So he was a Sharakim, which was it's something that looks like a civilized half-orc, honestly. But apparently they're really smart. So, okay, cool. So you got brains and bronze, basically. He played a rogue wizard, and he focused on wizard after our mandatory couple levels. And he ultimately created what will forever be known as Flying Tentacled Treant Jesus, which is such a phrase. And I don't remember if I've already told this story, so I'm going to tell it again. He combined a lot of spells using, I think they're called spell glyphs. Basically, little magical items that can hold a spell, and you can activate them to release that spell. So he had spells like Girolon's Blessing, which gives you an extra set of arms. Fun. And then Bull Strength, Fuse Arms, which would then take those extra arms and just shift them back up into a normal pair of arms. Cool. And double your strength. Because now your 4 arms are now 2 arms that are twice as strong. He had Fly and Polymorph, was it? Something to turn him into a treant by the end of it all. Also, I think somewhere in there he got a spell that gave him a bunch of tentacles, which he then fused together using the Fuse Arms spell, which was terrifying because holy shit, that's a lot of limbs that are just suddenly becoming a lot stronger if fewer limbs. And of course, flying, because of course, why not? So he regularly had a strength of like 40, just flying around. And his weapon of choice was a shot put with sizing on it. So he'd take this ball of what's normally iron, I think, and he would grow it to, I don't know, colossal size, like the size of a house, and just chuck it at enemies. We managed to piss off an elven city-state once that sent a fleet after our hometown, and we sank the fleet because Rickett just went bowling, basically. He tossed this, 2-ton ball of steel in. He basically dribbled it because he had, what was it? A returning on it as well. It's it was frightening in a way, what he ended up with. He was definitely the most min-maxed and powerful wizard I think I've ever come across. I think he locked away that character sheet just so he wouldn't be tempted to recreate it in such detail ever again. It was just that game-breaking. So, a wizard might start off like a small nerd who's hiding behind the fighter, but be careful who you make fun of in middle school. Is really what it comes down to. Oh, hello. Hello, Pookie. Look at this beautiful boy. He knows that we're at the end of the player's handbook. He's excited for the next part of our story. Bless you. So, now that we've gotten to the end of the player's handbook, I'll go into some secondary material. Now, I wasn't certain of where to start because I do have quite a few fun bits from extraneous, this, that, and the other. But I'm going to try and go in more chronological order. Are you just hiding in my elbow? That's adorable. So, one of the first classes that we made heavy use of outside of our normal player's handbook was the ninja. As a matter of fact, I had a ninja campaign once. It was just myself as the DM, and then my brother Rickett and Ashenra. And they were both just pure ninja. It was an oriental setting. I think it was a homebrew setting, but we kind of... I think we did it twice, technically, and got better. It got dumb pretty quickly, but it was great. It was the kind of dumb that you really love to play. But not necessarily that makes a huge amount of great stories. But, yeah, they were Katsu and Tanaka Daichi. And, actually, it's funny because Ashenra's character Tanaka has actually made appearances in other campaigns, especially when he was deployed or in the military. If he ever had a chance to, come home and visit while we were playing D&D, well, he'd just grab Tanaka and say, okay, so my ninja slides in for the session, and that made enough sense. Are you stuck? Don't be stuck. So, I think my favorite or most vivid memory of Tanaka and Katsu, the ninjas, was when they were tasked with delaying an enemy army. Well, it was more of a warband, but you get the idea. A large enemy force. Yes. Hello. Okay. So there's a large enemy force, and they'll be here like tomorrow, and we need you to delay them. And I'm thinking, like, well, maybe they'll set fire to the grasslands that are between here and there, or, sabotage some of the enemy wagons. What I don't expect is for them to slip past the guards and then brutally murder basically everyone in the camp. Like, they got through like half of the enemy army before an alarm was raised. Yeah. I could have probably run that better, but boy was it something. We drink to forget. So that was an adventure and a half right there. Ninjas always are an interesting addition to a campaign, and they will almost certainly cause some sort of 80s-esque B-movie nonsense. I swear. And they're like set up for it. And just like monks, they just create a level of Asian flavor that I'm not certain is culturally sensitive. But it's definitely entertaining. Moving on. We'll go to Artificer. from the Eberron campaign setting. Oh, where to begin with Artificer? So an Artificer is a class that revolves around the making and use of magic items. So they get spell-like abilities called infusions, which they can put on either themselves or others, mainly onto equipment, basically making temporary magic items. But as they get better, they can actually make a lot of really cool magic items, which is terribly dangerous in the hands of somebody who is willing to go through all of the lists and all of the charts and all of the books that talk about creating magic items. People like Roz. Roz has played probably 4 or 5 Artificers by now. And all of them are pretty effective. Don't get me wrong. But I'm going to talk about 2 in particular. One is just a very quick aside, as kind of like the aspirations of an Artificer. Now, this character was part of a campaign that kind of fizzled out, unfortunately. I believe we called it the Pirate Artificer campaign, because it started out with all the whole party being, like, if not Artificers, then casters who focused on creating magical items. I think Ashenra was a scion who focused, or who was going to focus on meta creativity and making psionic items, but the other characters were largely Artificers, which was rough, a very dangerous thing. Now, mind you, half of the party got captured and died, effectively, which is unfortunate for them. So it kind of shifted after that into a pirate campaign, as the remaining characters decided to leave town and, well, go play pirate. And it was entertaining enough. It was a good time enough. But they kept, like, butting up against the Blood of Vol, which is kind of like cultists. I believe in necromancy and the power of blood. And there was just kind of this... They kept clashing to an extent. It was interesting, and it was pretty good. I could have probably leaned more heavily into it, and it would have made a better campaign, but I was kind of pacing it a little too slowly. Pacing is just something you learn how to do. Whatever. And somewhere throughout there, the Artificer, I think through what effectively amounted to a Palantir from Lord of the Rings, was directly confronted by Vol, the Lich Queen, the secret head of the Blood of Vol cult. And it's summarized up with her making a lot of threats that one way or another he would serve her in this life or the next, kind of insinuating some sort of turning him into, like, capturing him and turning him into a vampire and whatever. Well, except that character kind of is like, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. Like, secretly, mind you, but, like, one-on-one with the DM later, he was like, I bet Blood of Vol has a big budget. I could make some pretty cool stuff with them. Mind you, this is a morally ambiguous character. So that campaign ended, and part of his epilogue was him sailing up to the Northern Isles and just disappearing. And he may, in fact, still be building a moon for Vol, because Vol was part of the dragon-marked House of Death, which disappeared, and so did its moon. More or less, it's kind of murky on that idea. But, yeah, so he might be making a moon for the Mark of Death. A death moon. And if you don't think that if that comes to fruition in a campaign or two, that I'm not having an out-of-genre Death Star trench run, you are damn wrong. Because hell yeah. Oh my god. That'd be fucking amazing. So, Artificer, yes. There's another Artificer currently in one of my campaigns named Deishong. He is a ninja Artificer. Cat. Actually, not cat. He's actually a Venaran, so he is a monkey folk. So, his character is basically Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. And it's hilarious. Hijinks ensue. He's great. And Roz really knows how to build an Artificer that can be just a frontline combatant, basically. Yes, oh, don't fall too far. Alright. So, with Artificers and Ninjas out of the way, where to go next? Well, I'll go briefly back to Dragon Mech, because I enjoy that, and it's kind of what we're doing at this very moment. And if I can come up with a bunch of other classes, we may keep going from there. We still have like 20 minutes, so assuming everything is good on your end, Teru, if you just, when you can, pop in the chat and tell me that everything's solid still. Awesome. Unfortunately, I don't have a huge number of stories for these guys. But oh, so exciting, because it is fun. But the characters themselves are pretty entertaining, even if I only have a small cast to draw on. Now, the first class is the Cog Layer, so the mechanic. Now, we have one Cog Layer currently, a Marigem, excuse me, who is a gnomish Cog Layer, so a gnome mechanic, which is almost cliche, but I like it. It's solid. It's definitely a solid build, and it entertains me. So, Marigem has a chest. Now, on this chest, she has placed robotic legs and reinforced the lid of the chest. So she can ride around on this chest, basically with little, I guess, a joystick or something. She can keep up with the rest of the party, at least going with a 30-foot movement speed, by riding around on this chest that holds all her shit, which I find funny. And something that she hasn't done in a while, and I wonder if she's forgotten. So, Venus, if you're watching, you might want to remember that you did reinforce the lid of the chest, if memory serves, so that she can just kind of like pop it up and hide behind it and use it as a marksman screen. You know, something that a cover. Basically, it's mobile cover for when she pulls out her steam gun or crossbow or what have you. Yes. Yes. Can I help you? Okay, that's fair. Now, I've talked briefly about mech pilots before. I've talked about all of these very briefly before, but I'll just go with one interaction, because we have two mech pilots, and I don't want to favor one or the other, even though Teru here is actually watching, and Giri is not currently here, if memory serves. So, imagine, if you will, there are two mechs of roughly the same size and power, and they are fighting a bunch of Kuatoa. For those of you who don't know, these are amphibious fishmen, maybe frogmen, kind of somewhere in that area. They're kind of aberrations. And one of the Kuatoa, decides to try and climb up the side of Teru's mech. Oh, Teru's having flashbacks. Good. So, here he is with this fishman just on his mech. Mechs aren't that nimble. They're not very flexible. He's having difficulty trying to get this thing off of him. Because he can't, like, directly see it. He just knows that it jumped on him. And it's climbing around somewhere. And the other mech pilot, Giri, and it's like, don't worry, I'll get it. With my lance. And charges at Teru's mech. Now, the Kuatoa only had, like, 10 hit points remaining at this time. So when Giri criticaled with a charging lance and dealt, like, 80 points of damage. Now, the Kuatoa was paced, but also was the armor beneath that Kuatoa. Effectively, he had dealt, like, 40-some points of damage. He dealt, like, 60 points of excess damage, and that just doesn't go away. All that force is not negated by a soft, squishy Kuatoa. No, it is not. So, he basically pierced through into Teru's mech, like, right above Teru's face. Just smashing above the cockpit. And gave Teru a sunroof, he said. Don't worry, you're welcome. The sunroof is free. I got it. And thus Teru got a sunroof for his mech. And the Kuatoa was slain. Instantly. Yes. The other unique class from that campaign is the Steamborg. So that is basically a cyborg run with a steam engine. Now, it's an interesting enough concept, and it kind of starts off rough. If you plan on starting your campaign at level 1, you might not want to go with Steamborg, because they don't get anything really cool until, like, 2nd or 3rd level. But as Ashenra has shown, a Steamborg can be a very effective member of a party. So, as a Steamborg, you basically start replacing bits. And in his case, he started off with the legs. Now, part of his character backstory is that, like, as a child, his legs got crushed in like an industrial accident. And I mean, that's great role playing. So fuck yeah. Now he has, well, we call them steamy legs, but they're mechanical legs, which started off with giving him like a movement speed of like I don't remember, like 35 or 40. So they're pretty good. But later on, they get steam powers, or what they're called. So he augmented the legs, so that it's like he can run like 80. What is it? Like his movement speed is like 60 or something like that. For one move action, so he's moving like 120 feet just by taking a double move, and he takes like a ×4 ×5 when he runs. So yeah, he's just all over the map, giving him the nickname of Cannon, like a cannon ball, just zooming all over the place. He then replaced his right arm, most recently, and built in a gun. He's going for a Mega Man style build, I think, is what he said. Yeah, I know, I'd hide my face too. It's okay. So he'll run up to an enemy, going at like 40 miles an hour, punch them, and shoot as he connects. Yes, I know, it's okay. I won't let him punch you. So yeah, a lot of crazy hijinks ensued. I'm being covered in cat hair, but I'll live. Let's see, we still have a little bit of time, so I'll talk about one other interesting class from a D20 supplement. I need to clarify that because neither Dragon Mech nor Iron Kingdoms, which I'm about to talk about, are officially Wizards of the Coast. So they aren't official D&D, they are D20 supplements. Cheers. And that class is the Gun Mage. Now, Gun Mages are funny. Well, they're fun. I should say that. They are fun. You shoot people, and sometimes you throw magic into your bullets to shoot people better. Or you can just cast spells, because it's basically a sorcerer with a pistol, is what it really comes down to. And that's pretty cool. It gets very expensive in Iron Kingdoms, because not only are pistols expensive, but bullets are expensive. Like, I think they're like, depending on the pistol, you're running like 3 or 4 gold pieces a shot. So at first level, you're like scrounging bullets, alright? Yeah, yes. So, one of his first... Yes. One of his first gun mages was a gobber, so a city goblin, named Zag. And Zag, we played a lot with Zag. Because in that campaign, it was just him and me. It was a one-on-one D&D. Because we played at school. We were in high school, and we had like 3 or 4 free periods back to back because we were seniors. We didn't care. And what was it? So we basically just brought a few of the D&D books to school, found a nice, quiet area. I think it was like the back office of the art room, and then just played D&D for like half of our school day. Because hell yeah. And that was like almost every day. So it was a good time. And he basically... I'm trying to think of how to summarize it. Because we played for a good couple months. A few hours every day. So there was a lot of nonsense going on there. But he basically hung out in the pirate capital of the world. And had a gang of urchins under his care. And he was running around with these urchins, teaching them to be like PCs, basically. Like, okay, you're pretty good at being a rogue. You might manifest some sorceress abilities, so we're gonna teach you this, that, and the other. And it was like gang fights and breaking into this place or another place, trying to get enough cash together to buy some more bullets, and so on and so forth. And there were a lot of really memorable characters from that, or at least a lot of memorable interactions, which is almost surprising that I can think back and remember that. With so much from high school being kind of a blur, it's kind of funny to look back at that and be like, okay, yeah, I remember there was a female goblin named Da, and then he had kind of a protege named Rag, and there were 2 Trollkin kids who were like the muscle of the group, and then just, how the hell do I remember this? Almost 10 years later. It's nonsense. So, that was one very... Don't die. I'm live streaming. Don't die on the live stream. Okay. Oh, hello. Okay. So that's gun mages. And he's played at least a couple gun mages since, or we've had a couple gun mages since then. Even played a elven gun mage for a while, and kind of in my sphere hopping campaign, my first sphere hopping campaign. So kind of an airship pirate kind of vibe. And she had a what was it? A hammock on the underside of the airship. That's ballsy. So, let's see. Let's see. There was another one that he did in my Eberron campaign just recently, who was just it was a house heir of Cannith. Hello. Okay. Don't step on my keyboard, please. Hopefully that didn't mess things up. But yeah, so gun mages have been throughout the campaigns, and they'll probably continue to make, if not frequent appearances, then occasional fun appearances. I think that's about all the time I have for today. Leave a like, comment down below what your favorite class is. Subscribe, hit that bell icon for notifications whenever I upload a video. We are coming up on our 1-year anniversary for the Minecraft series, so we'll be doing something special for that, I promise. And until we meet again, dear friends, Hantanil Tulien, and farewell.